listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome.
Good morning. This is Second Wind. Thank you for being here today because, as you always know, I have a fabulous guest for you today. One that's going to change your life, I do believe. At least it's going to open your heart and you'll be fascinated with her story. Now, I do want you to remember that this is spring. This is when everything changes and we can start anew. We can plant new seeds. So this program will be something that can help you plant your seed. Now, let me share with you my guest this morning. My guest is Genevieve Piturro. She's an amazing woman and was a successful professional career, had a career as a TV marketing executive, but changed her direction after a conversation with a 6-year-old girl's question that changed her life. Genevieve jumped off the corporate ladder she was on and began her search for fulfillment and purpose. Today, she will share her purpose found in the Pajama Program, which started in 2001 and has provided over 7,000 peaceful nights sleep for children in their new pajamas. Awesome. Her new book, Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, is a #1 Amazon selling book, as well as she has won numerous awards with this publication. Today, we will share how she can find purpose and the power of the human connection personally and in business. Welcome, Genevieve.
Hello, Joyce. Hello. I am proud to correct you that it is 7 million.
Oh, thank you.
I know.
How did I leave that out?
That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. And you can pronounce my name Genevieve. That's the American version. There are lots of different versions around the world. Yeah. But I usually go by Genevieve.
Genevieve. All right. Now, tell me about the 6-year-old girl. I'm fascinated that someone could make such an impression on you at that young age. But I also found in listening and studying about you, you have a very big heart. It's just part of who you are. And I'm sure it was very prevalent even in your corporate life, you know, with your cohorts and so forth. But tell us about the 6-year-old girl.
Oh, sure. Well, let me just say that I always wanted to be in the corporate world. I never thought I'd be here talking to you about a nonprofit that I founded. Never mind that it's 22 years, or it was a little girl that woke me up. So being in the corporate world for about 12 years, it was very businesslike. And there were many times it did go against my nature because I just wanted to, to enjoy and love and do whatever I could to help my clients and all of that. And, the corporate world has some parameters. So sometimes it was hard to lead with your heart in that business, which is probably why when I heard a voice in me ask, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? That's probably why I perked up, because my heart was probably trying to, get out to let me hear it. And I went to visit shelters so I could spend time with the children that were in emergency shelters, especially at night. I could go at night because I worked during the day, and I couldn't imagine how frightening it would be in these shelters, because where I was going to go were places that the police and social workers took children and they slept there while the system figured out what to do. Right. So when I went in and read to the children, it was, like you said, all heart. My heart, their heart, even though they were so quiet, their heart was beating so loud. I mean, you could just tell they were afraid. They didn't trust, and they were wearing clothes that they'd been wearing for days, but they were safe, thank God. So when I saw them sleeping in their clothes, I just had a flash of my mom's bedtime for me and my sister and my 2 brothers, and how joyous it was, and story time. And although I read to these children in the shelter, I left and they went into this room, which was pretty bare with just a few futons and cots to sleep, and they slept in their clothes. So when I saw them sleeping in their clothes in this bare room, all I could think about was, where are their pajamas? Why aren't they, having any kind of a bedtime? Of course, I was so ignorant. I'd never seen a bedtime in an emergency shelter before. I never thought about it. So the next week I brought pajamas for the children. And there was one little girl who was so afraid to take them from me. She kept saying no. And she didn't trust. And I tried to gently impress upon her how soft they were and that she could keep them and that they would fit her and that how pretty they were. And she whispered to me, "What are pajamas?" And that was the question that really rocked me. And I was so glad I was kneeling down in front of her, because I would have fallen over. I'd never, ever in a million years thought I'd ever hear a question like that from a little girl.
Right.
But she didn't know. I had to explain to her, pajamas are what you sleep in, you can change. And that was the beginning of the end of my love for the corporate world. And little did I know at that moment I'd be here talking to you, Joyce, all these years later, with a Pajama Program, a national organization, and like we said, 7 million pajamas and books for this bedtime that they need. So a good night for a good day is what we say.
Right. With the Pajama Program, they don't have people that would read books to them when they're in those facilities, do they?
The children in the emergency shelters, I suppose volunteers can come and read to them. We have 2 reading centers, and some of our volunteers do read at the places where the children are.
Right.
Our reading centers in New York and Atlanta, the children come in groups and volunteers read to them and give them pajamas and books to take back to wherever they're sleeping.
So what was the next thing you did after that day when that young girl rocked your world? I mean, I know you probably had a lot of reflection as to what you were going through.
I did. I had a lot of reflection, and I did a lot of shopping. I just couldn't, and that's what I say in my book. I mean, I was obsessed. I couldn't stop thinking about how many of those little girls and boys are there. And I couldn't get enough pajamas so that none of them that I would visit would be without. So it grew both by perseverance and guts. And I didn't tell anyone because I didn't know what this was. I didn't know if I could do this just on the side. I couldn't stop thinking about it. My work was suffering. I never saw how anybody makes money in nonprofit because I was just ignorant. So for a long time, I didn't tell anyone. And I had the charade going on at work with a suitcase and thinking I was going away for the weekend when it was full of pajamas for the kids. And I would take long lunches and I'd leave early and come in late. And it was getting messy.
Yeah.
So I just finally, either I'd lose my mind or I'd lose my job or both.
Right.
I finally had to start thinking about quitting or slowly, going to part-time. But financially, I couldn't afford it. So my book talks about all the things that happened and the decisions I made, good and bad, the trouble I got into, good and bad, with my credit cards.
Yes.
But I didn't see another way. I just had to get as many pajamas to these kids as I could.
Yeah. There's something about that inner voice that when you connect with something, it's like you almost question, you go, what are you doing here? Don't do this to me.
Joyce, you're right.
And you
It fights your head. It fights your head, and it's a battle.
Yes, it is. But the grace is that it's so strong that it will not let you alone. So thank you that you listened and you moved with this project.
Oh,
because
well,
over the years you've done amazing things.
Well, it's everybody who helped. I'd still be
Yeah.
just Santa Claus with a sack of pajamas on my back if people didn't feel like I did when I told them about the little girl. But everybody's heart felt her. Everybody heard her voice and my voice. Everybody felt the same way. This is simple. We can fix this. This is not right. And I think because all of us have been lonely or felt alone, felt sadness in our lives, and that's the emotion that is so prevalent with these in these children that we can relate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When you did make the decision and moved forward in this path, how did your life look? I mean, was it just total chaos for you, or did you find that there was good common thinking on your side? Yes, we all make mistakes, but we recover fast, I think, because we're really good at recovery. So how was it that when you left your corporate job and moved into this nonprofit? Tell me about those days, because I know there's lots of confusion sometimes in those transitions.
Yes, there definitely was a chaotic phase in me and in everything I was doing, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was afraid to ask. I had to get over telling people what I was doing and getting through all the questions that I had no answers for, and all the looks and why would you do that? And that was very hard. And I had just met a man that was terrific. And so I had to just, gather my courage and tell him, well, if we get involved, I'm not really an income generator anymore, or won't be soon. But he said, go for it. And he can attest to the fact that we had a strong love, but I made it very chaotic because I was obsessed, and maybe that's a strong word. Maybe it's focused, for an entrepreneur, but I always felt obsessed. And I just had to do everything that meant I could get the kids their pajamas. I had to get there, and I had to make time, and I had to spend the extra money, and I had to beg him to help me. And I had to, and it was very hard, but I was hard on myself because first I didn't ask for help. And when I finally did, it was amazing how much order was placed in the growth process, because I didn't have to figure out things that there wasn't any way I could know, the legal things, the financial things, the IRS things. That's what was keeping me in chaos. And then when I finally let go and asked for help and got people to do things with me, there was at least a path, a clear path I could see. And I will never say that I didn't make chaos. I did. Yes. Organized confusion.
For sure. I know from past histories with me that being in a nonprofit, you're always $1 short. And it's very frustrating when you have such a passion to be $1 short.
You're right, Joyce. I'm nodding.
I see. So how did you address the money issue?
I never stopped worrying, honestly. I lost a lot of sleep. And I know that that's common. And my husband teaches meditation, and that helped. I learned to trust, and my book is full of messages from the universe and how I listened and how I asked for help, and invisible help came. But it's all about trust. If you're on purpose, and that's what I teach now, helping people find their purpose. If you're on purpose, I think that there's this invisible network, and I call it, I talk about the human connection, and it seems like it's an invisible network of helpers, but it's honestly the human connection. Once you start talking about what you're doing, and if it's your purpose, people align. The ones who align with you come to you for support. I never would have known that. I mean, the corporate world is so far from, trusting in the universe. It's so much fact-based. You can't do this if you don't have that. So I had to learn a lot of lessons about myself, about other people, and how to trust in the unseen.
Well, I went to your website, which of course is full of great information, and it is www.GenevievePiturro.com. Right. Did I say it right that time?
You did.
Did I get an A?
Yes, that's the American version. That's it.
What you develop programs, and I'm trying to get these programs in alignment. So you did the Pajama Program, after that was your first one, but you've expanded your giving into so many other programs that you do. So you have something called the ACER Business Program, and that's your latest program, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's a
You've
business.
developed.
Yes, that's a business program because of the 22 years of such a different type of organization. And I had to be a different type of leader.
Yeah.
It was much more natural for me with Pajama Program because I led with my heart, and everyone with a heart who was drawn to it. And I think that was a different way than I was a leader in nonprofit, or that I had bosses. They were different in the corporate world. I was different in the corporate world too. So I put together the Purpose ACER program, and now I have a friend who's partnering with me to roll it out for businesses, because we're all about purpose now, right? We're all looking, right? And leaders are looking to align their purpose with their company and with the help and support of their employees.
Right. Yeah. How do corporates settle on a general focus for their projects that they want to support?
You mean when they're looking for purpose with their employees? It's very different. Depends on also the size of the organization. It's much easier if you're on the small side to hire the people that you can interview and tell, and talk about what your purpose is and what your business is and why it contributes to the greater good. And it's easier for a small group to find something that's in common together. And then when it's trickier when it's a larger organization, because some people want a job and some people won't align with your purpose. Right. But the trick is to be honest and communicate well what your purpose is, for the leaders to know personally how they align with the business's purpose. And they have to know how to communicate it. And they also have to know how to choose the people that will invest themselves because they feel, in alignment with the purpose. And then finally, there's got to be a way for leaders to offer ways for employees and teams to feel that they're contributing from their purpose to the organization. Not that they only can play the piano, on the weekend. Maybe there's a way to incorporate their personal love and purpose, share it among everyone. So it's a different landscape, but I think it's going to take a little while for companies to figure it out.
Right. Now, your book has just been so well received. Tell us about what you've included in the book. I mean, you've told your story. I know that's an important part of your mission, but how does your book help the reader?
Every chapter ends with the heart of the matter, leadership and life lessons.
Okay.
And so I'll tell stories. I'll tell about our growth. I'll tell the good and bad. I'll tell the mistakes I made and the things I did right and the people who helped and the advice I got. And then depending on what the chapter focused on, there are a bunch of leadership lessons I learned. Some the hard way, some that came naturally, but they're listed at the end of each chapter, and they're universal. Some I wouldn't have thought of until I went through something, and then I had that aha moment and I share it. That's something that everybody can learn from. And some are lessons that we forgot, and some are lessons we just don't think about on our day-to-day basis, which we should.
Yeah, right. So is each chapter a different issue that you're talking about?
Yes, it goes chronologically, but as the issues come up, yes, there are different, each chapter is a different part of the story. Yeah, different things happened.
Yeah. So it's so interesting to me that out of the mouth of babes come great works of missions. That's just a scripture that you hear all the time, but it actually is. The babies ask us the questions that tell us many times what direction and what they're needing and how we can support them. So if you would you share with us the steps for finding your purpose?
Sure. And I invite anyone to go to my blog on Genevieve Piturro I think it's the last one I wrote a few months ago. And it is because people always ask, and because I held a seminar, a summit for those who were looking for their purpose. And the exercise there I'll tell you generally, I ask you to take 90 minutes of alone time and in a quiet place where you won't be interrupted. You can have a glass of wine, a cup of tea, anything you want, and paper and pen, no laptop, no computer. It's hand to pad. And it starts with a list of 10 things you love to do and how to whittle it down and how to feel your body and how to talk to yourself and how to listen to yourself, which is why 90 minutes is the right amount. 60 minutes, you're watching the clock for when's the hour going to end. And anymore, we don't concentrate. But there are several steps that will take you through a few exercises that will let you know about yourself, what you love, the top 3 things, and what to do next.
Yeah, that's a good way to start. So how can we reconnect with this stage that we've gone through with the pandemic? We're all kind of coming out now. And then we get threats, don't come out too fast. And then we go back in. And it's made such a difference in our society. I think we're angry. I think we don't know where we're going. We don't know if we can fly there. And so there's so many things that we're facing today.
You're absolutely right. And you said the magic word earlier, grace. If we can extend that to each other and start a conversation, even if it's awkward, because there's so many conversations now that are awkward, even with people that we know, even with people that we've been on Zoom with, and we think we've had, a good meeting with or whatever. Seeing people in person is almost jarring sometimes. We're getting out there, but even I feel like a loss for words sometimes, and I don't like that because I'm an extrovert. I like to talk and I like to hear and listen. So I find, and I teach, the human connection is something that's really unbreakable. It might be on pause for some of us.
Yeah.
It might have retreated for a heck of a long time. But I think if we take a deep breath and we ask someone how the last couple of years been for you, rather than how are you?
Oh, that's a good one. And
maybe if you share, I'm excited to be coming out. Had a little bit a turbulent time. My mom was sick. I'm speaking as Genevieve here. Yeah. My mom was sick at the very beginning, and we were afraid because at the beginning we all thought that was a death sentence, right?
Right.
But she recovered, and we're so grateful. And my heart goes out to those who've had a hard time and have lost loved ones. And I hope you've come through, and you've been okay, something like that. Offer something personal, but ask, but say how, maybe it's awkward, or I don't know what to say, but I want to share, and if you know anything specific about the person, lead with that. Just, I don't want to say force yourself, but just take a deep breath and start a conversation.
I'm in Texas. So in Texas, we kind of feel like we have this super dome around ourselves or something. We've stopped all the precautions, actually, basically. And so I think people get really confused. I've had conversations only recently this week with somebody says, well, what if I put on a mask? I mean, maybe I'm the only one in the room. And we have that feeling of isolating ourselves, even by wearing the mask. And so it's a strange time, but we're needing to put that confidence back in ourselves and move on out.
Yes, we need to find the similarities. We need to find the compassion. We need to find the humanness and the human connection, because we're not the same. Not one of us is the same. Not one of us went through this. without
Right.
feeling it in some way, not one. Some did very well. They still came through something horrific for the general public, the world. And I can't believe that they weren't touched in some way by some human frailty through this. And that's a commonality that I think we share clearly, but that has changed us.
Yeah. What was the momentum behind writing your book? Was that to publicize the book, the success of your program, or how did you feel this was an important book for you to write?
People have been always asking me, can I do this too? I have this desire. I've always wanted to do this. Sometimes it was start a nonprofit because this happened to me and my family, or I really, I'm an accountant and I really want to be a teacher, but I didn't do that. Now I regret it. Is there still time? So over those years, I got a lot of questions and I mentored a lot of people and I had a lot of stories. And I figured if I could write a book and put everything in there, then other people who I might never get to meet might recognize themselves in there. And if I could talk about it and share it, if there was a way to do that, then maybe other people would say, oh, look at this woman. She's like regular. She made a mess of things. I'm not good with finances either. And, but I have a heart of gold and I cry at the drop of a hat. Well, that was me. All that was me. So I'm hoping, and I get letters and emails and from people I don't know. So I'm just grateful that it's reaching some people I would never meet.
Yes. But you do a lot of speaking now with this program. You've really gone out and you speak a lot all over the world, it says. Is that correct? I
do speak a lot, certainly before COVID, and now it's back in person. So that's good. And I was just in Texas speaking the keynote at the Taffy for the teachers.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I was just there the last day of March, I believe, March 3rd. Yeah. And it was wonderful. It was in Dallas. And Dallas. In Dallas. And I love to do that because it's great to share in person a story that I never thought would be mine, and a story that, again, has highs and lows, and that has a lot of resonance with people now. When the publisher told me my book was coming out in the middle of the pandemic and the isolation, I said, oh my goodness. But I didn't say, let's change it. There was something in me that said, let it be. And it turned out to be because purpose is in the title of my book. And that's the P word went from pivot to purpose. So I think that it's okay.
Yeah. I also noticed in your information that you sent that you did a TEDx talk.
I did a TEDx talk.
And
in the pandemic.
In the pandemic.
Yes, they asked me to videotape it. So it's very strange doing a TEDx talk or any talk, even if I did it on Zoom, and I talked a lot during Zoom with different groups, You're still looking at faces, but to do a speech, let alone a TEDx speech, which I'd always, wanted to do, and that one was supposed to be live, then they say, please do it on video. That was the strangest thing. It was me. My husband was my cheerleader there behind the cameraman and the cameraman. Because of COVID, you couldn't have too many people around you. They were wearing masks.
Yeah.
I had to stand far enough away, and I did the best I could.
Well, I'm always so impressed when somebody does the TED Talk, because I just think, well, that's an achievement right there to do a TED Talk. I have not done one, but anyway, that's interesting that they made it work, even though it wasn't on the stage. Yes.
2 years. First, they said postpone everything, so everything was canceled. And then when we didn't see an end yet in the isolation of COVID, then they said, okay, now please, everybody, we need to move on this. So let's do the video and see what happens.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, that horrible situation we have down on the border of Texas. And I think I'd be right there crying with you if I saw those children in those cages. But how do you manage those tender moments that just really make you want to cry?
I've hidden in the past. I've hidden behind bookshelves. I've hidden behind the door. I've had a lot of those moments. And I never wanted the children to see me cry, or the volunteers, but I was more concerned that the children would think, something was wrong. But
Yeah.
oh yeah, I still do now. I still do when I talk about it, when I tell certain stories, on stage. It's impossible for me not to. I used to try to hold it in, but it doesn't work. So it's very hard, especially if it's a moment with children that you've never met, a new group. The children are always saying different things. They say something that you say, oh my God, I never heard that before. That's just went right through my heart. I mean, they're, and the kids have hidden in our reading centers because they didn't want to go back on the bus to wherever they were going. I mean, it's just, that made me cry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they just want to stay, their hugs they don't want to unhug you. I mean, it's just, I could go on and on, but it's not easy for me. And I don't think I think when you go into nonprofit, you already are a softie.
Yes.
So.
That's true. Well, you said you had other stories. Do you have one that you can just think of that was one of those that I don't want you to cry?
Okay, I'll tell you
out.
one that was hard to hear, and then a funny one. How's that?
Okay.
I'll start with the one that was hard to hear. So early days, I was hooked up with a group that is long lasting here in New York. And they started years and years ago where mothers who didn't or couldn't care for their children would leave their children in a bassinet at the door.
Oh.
And they still are in existence today. I do not know if they ever find a child on their doorstep anymore, but they do take care of children who've been left. So we were meeting them at their office with the children would be there, and we were bringing pajamas and books. And we went, and I was organizing with a couple of volunteers the piles according to size, boys and girls. Mm-hmm. And they brought the children in, and we got to say hello, and the children took a pair of pajamas in their size. And then there were more there, and then we were just talking amongst ourselves, and I noticed a little boy. He was probably about 7. I think he was older than 5. I usually think he's 7 when I picture him. So he was swiping girls' pajamas every chance he got. He would see if we were looking, and he would come in and swipe a pair of pajamas and go away and come back and do the same thing. And he must have swiped a bunch. And I was giggling to myself. I didn't know what he was doing. And I said to the person in charge, there's this little boy, and he's coming behind you, and he thinks no one's looking, but he's taking girls' pajamas. So she looked at me, she said, I'll find out. So she went over, and I guess she found him, and she had the story, and she came back and she said, well, he and his sister were brought in 2 days ago. Their mother was burning them with her cigarettes. The little girl was burned worse, so she's in ICU, and he's trying to get as many pajamas for her as he can to give to somebody to bring her in the hospital.
Oh,
see, it's going to make me cry. So that was the first and only time I heard that very reason. Now I'll tell you the funny one. So there was this place in Chicago that I went, and boxes had been delivered, and I was showing up to open the boxes with the kids. Mm-hmm. So I opened the boxes with the kids, and they were all ages. And then there was this little girl, and we gave her a pair of pajamas, and she loved them. And she was a giggly little girl. And she gave me a big hug, and she whispered in my ear, I love my pajamas. Next time, can you bring me shoes?
Work on down the body.
So that was Isabella. So I always love, I always love that story with Isabella.
Yeah, it's a sweet story. I'm curious though, how one of your organizations works. Do you pick the town and do you create that way? Or how do you expand your program? How does it start?
Well, we're in every city and every state, and we have about 42, 43 chapters right now. And so they're all run by volunteers, and every chapter is responsible for the list that together our organization and the local chapter president make of the places that are in need where they serve the children in that city or territory. Some of the chapters have a state that they are responsible for. So everything that they collect in that state through people doing drives or money and they buy pajamas or events that they have goes back to their community, to that list of children in the order of what will fit them and when it comes in to those local children. And then we can supplement from headquarters. So that's how it goes. So if there happens to be a city where there's no chapter president, then a corporate will take care of that, so that anything that's raised in those cities stays in the cities. And that's really great. So we love that for the chapters.
Yeah. So Dallas has a functioning group there.
Yes. Yeah. And anybody can go anywhere on the website, pajamaprogram.org, O-R-G, and look at, I think it's under how to help chapters, find your chapter, and you just put in your zip code or whatever, and you can see it and you can meet. You'll get the introduction to the local person who is in charge.
Well, I have enjoyed so much talking to you today. It's been a treat. You answered every one of my questions. Because, because I find this so interesting that it starts with just one little girl and one woman, and there goes from there, and creates something really awesome. And answers a problem.
I want to say I appreciate that. And before I started Pajama Program, I was also in awe of, one person can make a difference, and one person does this and change the world. Well, I've learned it's not exactly that. It's the power of one isn't what changes things. It's the power of one another that moves mountains and moves people.
Yeah, good point.
I have to say that everywhere I go, because it's the truth. We have to be in it together.
Yeah. But the idea came through you. That's what I'm going with. Without your idea, it could have never been picked up. It's just being in the right place when the message calls.
It's listening, right? It's listening. Yeah. Listening to yourself, listening to your heart. Yes.
Yeah. One of those questions I can almost imagine. I went through grief at the end of last year. And when you go through a transition like that, you all of a sudden stop. And I had the presence of mind to just reevaluate, because the shock of that trauma that I was going through, probably the most grief I've ever experienced. I've had people die, but this brought that to my presence. So it's all about, what do I love? How do I love spending my time? What I don't want to do is spend time where I'm not happy. And that's exactly what you did in taking.
Yes. And Joyce, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I can't imagine, but I can tell from your voice that it was traumatic. And I'm so sorry about that. And it's just, it's power of grace. I'll use your word again, that's giving you the courage to even say that it's changed you so that you know what's important now. And, and thank God for that. So I'm happy to hear that. And I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Well, as we've come to the end of our show, I really want to ask you a question that I ask most of my guests. And so, may I ask you?
Okay, now you have me curious. All right, should I be nervous?
No, okay. Dude, you're not nervous. What would be the thing that you would share with us that has been the most successful thing that you have done in your life?
Well, I would say it's Pajama Program, but specifically, I would say to have the nerve to tell that story often enough to make a change that we've been able to make together, because that little girl's question and that sentiment and her feelings went to everyone's heart. That simple question and the reason she asked that question and what it was about. I think people realized, you know what, we are talking about just pajamas and material. We're talking about what was missing in this little girl because she didn't have a bedtime that we did or that we give our children. And I think just the smarts I had to tell that story and reiterate what she asked me over and over again.
Yeah.
And I urge people to tell their stories. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit, doesn't have to be because of the business you started. Just tell your story.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really have, now tell us again how people can go and see if there is a facility close to them. And that's at what?
If they go to pajamaprogram.org and look for the place where the map and the chapters are, they can then find who the chapter president is and what the chapter president's doing there and how they can get involved. And if they want any help from me or need anything about me or want to ask me a question or an introduction to Pajama Pro, whatever, you can find me at GenevievePiturro.com and write to me there. And I'd be happy to spend time.
Well, you also were very generous to offer a consultation.
Yes, I'm happy to. If anyone's looking for their purpose, wants to make a daring move, or wants to, I call it, slide their purpose into their life because they don't necessarily have to quit their job. Yes, I teach both, and I'd be very happy to share and to listen and to find some options for the person.
Yeah. But do you work one-on-one with people, or are you working?
Yes, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, and I'm a speaker. Yes.
Okay. Your card is full.
Just the way I like it, Joyce.
Absolutely. Well, this has just been so enlightening. I know that my audience has benefited from your message. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
being on Second Wind.
Oh, thank you, Joyce.
Now, listeners, my audience, my dear sweet people that show up every week, or maybe this is your first time with Second Wind. I created Second Wind so that you can have programs like this that can offer change to your life, can address a need that's not being met in your life. So today, I ask you again to share this program because you're sharing answers for somebody that may be going through something very similar to what you're experiencing. And it's only when we share and talk with each other that we grow. Support and community are the most important in helping us grow and become a better person. So thank you for being here. It's always great to know that you're here. And I look forward to next week when we will gather again to discuss your second wind. Thank you for being here.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.